In what is a huge relief for India, a big news came in today and a nation heaved a sigh of relief. The death sentences of 8 Indian Navy veterans was commuted in an alleged espionage case in Qatar. The veterans, remember, had earlier been sentenced to death by a Qatari court. Now, as of now, the death sentence stands cancelled. The detailed verdict, meanwhile, is awaited. So we'll get to know the quantum of punishment, but sources suggest that it is now a jail term. Many in the naval community also believe that the charges must be dropped completely and that this is a false case. Now, one of the next steps that India can now look at is the fact that even if these charges are not dropped, India and Qatar can have an arrangement where prisoners of either country can serve their sentence in their home country. In fact, to this effect, India has a treaty with Qatar as well on the transfer of sentenced persons. It was signed in 2015. Remember, this is also being seen as a big win for Indian diplomacy. Remember, this year, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Qatar's Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al-Thani on the sidelines of the COP28 summit in Dubai, where the two leaders had discussed the bilateral partnership and the well-being of the Indian community living in Qatar. The meeting had come days after the Indian government appealed against the death penalty of these 8 Navy veterans. In fact, the relative of one of the Navy veterans, Commander Purnendu Tiwari, who's stuck in Qatar, thanked the government for this latest decision. Listen in.
हम लोग तो बहुत अभिलाषी हैं कि भारत सरकार ने हमारी मदद की, हमारे केस को सुना और इनके कॉज के लिए सरकार ने पूरी एफर्ट्स की, जितना भी हो सकता था सब लोगों ने अच्छा किया। और उसके बाद हमें तो ये लग रहा है कि इनकी एफर्ट से ये सज़ा माफ़ हुई। भारत सरकार की सहायता के बिना ये काम हो ही नहीं सकता था संभव। अरे बहुत आभारी हैं साहब हम तो भारत सरकार के, प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी जी के, पूरी गवर्नमेंट के, गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसीज़ के, सबके आभारी हैं कि जिन्होंने हमारे भाई को एक फांसी के तख्ते से बचा लिया।
Now, once this initial verdict was given, remember, India gained consular access to our veterans. The veterans were all employees of Doha-based Dahra Global, and they were taken into custody in August 2022. Following their arrest last year, the 8 former Navy personnel were moved out of solitary confinement and put in a double-bed occupancy in a jail ward. After the initial verdict was pronounced, India had called it deeply shocking. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Sheikh had met with the family members of these 8 men and assured them that the government attaches the highest importance to the case. So what are India's options now and how does this case move forward really? We talk about it on the show tonight. Joining me are J.K. Tripathi, former ambassador, Major General Dhruv Katoch, Director, India Foundation, and Parvez Memon, Senior Partner, MZM Legal, joins us on the show. Good evening, namaskar, welcome to all you gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us on Mirror. Now, I'd like to start with you, General Dhruv Katoch. This, of course, has come as a big victory for India diplomatically, legally, when we see that the death sentence has been called off. Now, of course, sources suggest that it is only a jail term. But of course, it is a first victory in a long battle that still remains.
Thank you, Shreya. You see, the way I look at it is, it was very important to get the death sentence commuted. If that sentence is executed, then it's game, set, and match over. So the first step was really to get that sentence commuted, because now time is available to ensure that justice is done. This is one. The second point I wish to bring out, there are 8 Navy personnel who were formerly of the Indian Navy. Now, I can understand one person spying, if for whatever reason or something, but 8 people, it doesn't happen that way. That is not the way spy networks work. So the question as to why all 8 have been involved into this sordid mess is something which actually flabbergasts me. But I think if they're given a fair trial and if the evidence is fairly presented, I don't think there is any legal base to convict any of them. So as a first step, it is a diplomatic victory. More importantly, I think it is a political victory because, the political leadership has actually got involved. The meeting of the Prime Minister with the Emir of Qatar, I think was a very important step. So, besides the External Affairs Ministry, the External Affairs Minister himself, and our diplomats who have worked tirelessly on this particular case, I think credit must also go to the Prime Minister, uh, for taking up Qatar on himself. And the last point wish to give on this is India has always maintained that wherever our citizens are, if there is a war zone, if there's a flood, etc., in any other countries, we will get our citizens home. No, I think this assurance is a very strong assurance. We have done that consistently in conflict areas across the world where we have got our citizens back. And now I think this is another thing because we had to get these citizens back. To all of us who know the way the system works, that these naval personnel are innocent. That's the bottom line. If it was one individual, I could have had some doubts. 8 individuals, it just doesn't work out that way. No agency works in this manner. And even otherwise, the job which they were doing of training other people, training personnel from Qatar, there is no access to some sort of secret documents which are earth-shattering. So I really don't see so why it has happened, that we'll have to see. Is there some external agency, which has engineered it? That we will see. But it is a sorted case, and I'm glad that at least the first step, the death sentence has been commuted. Shreya.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, Parvez Memon, we know that this is a first step and there is still a long battle that is to be fought by the Indian government. But legally, what we've seen so far, how does that work when we see inter-country legal processes, and how does this case move forward now? What are India's legal options?
Well, Shreya, firstly, this is indeed a heartwarming news to get that they are off the cliff of death sentence and it has been committed to imprisonment. However, as you still await the details of the judgment, we do not know that the commuting of death sentence, is it for a particular term of imprisonment that they are committed, or is it a life term, or what it is. So it would not be advisable to speak on the merits of the matter or otherwise. However, in law, there are remedies available herefrom. We have achieved a great milestone because, as Major Katoch has rightly said, that death sentence once executed is irreversible. Herefrom, we can explore all the remedies available in law, including further appeals in the courts of law in Qatar, if that is provided. Thereafter, we also have steps to take in the international courts of justice. And also, you have rightly stated about the treaty between India and Qatar. The treaty is termed as Repatriation of Prisoners Act of 2004, to which India and Qatar are signatories. So Repatriation of Prisoners Act permits two nations to exchange the prisoners serving sentence in their individual countries. So India can have that bargain or barter to that extent that some Qatari prisoners languishing in Indian jails can be repatriated back to Qatar to serve the remainder of their sentence, and the Indian Navy officers could be brought back to the country to serve the remainder of sentences. However, in my personal view, this would not serve the purpose of getting them the freedom that we so earnestly desire. As Major General Katoch was rightly commenting on the merits of the matter, that it feels it is improbable that 8 people would be involved in spying. So we need to see that we get them freedom in its entirety. So all the processes of appeal, including right up to the International Court of Justice, should be explored. We should at the same time thank the government of India,
Parvez,
our external affairs
Parvez,
ministry,
let me also get an
Prime
understanding
Minister.
from you. Yeah, let me also get an understanding from you, Parvez, that, when we talk about this treaty that India and Qatar share of repatriating prisoners of either countries, would that be the next step, or does that come after a couple of legal steps have been explored?
It does come after the legal steps have been explored in its entirety. There has to be a full stop to the legal process. And thereafter, when whatever for the term the sentence is confirmed by the highest court of appeal, be it the highest court in Qatar or be it the International Court of Justice, when that XYZ term is assigned to these prisoners, it is at that point of time that the diplomatic channels would take shape, that the Repatriation of Prisoners Act would come into force, and for their remainder of sentence, they would be repatriated back to India.
Okay. Okay. All right. Ambassador Tripathi, this whole decision today by the Qatari court has been seen as a diplomatic win for India. We've also had the Prime Minister personally intervene in this. We've seen him meeting the Emir of Qatar, and we know that the two countries share a good relationship. And therefore, the question is that perhaps, Qatar wouldn't want this kind of a damage to the healthy relationship that the two countries share.
Well, Shreya, here I a bit disagree with you or General Katoj. It is too premature to say that it is a political victory. Because as far as my limited knowledge is there, if a case is sub judice, then I don't think any political leader can intervene in that to influence the judgment. Generally, I mean, in India, it doesn't happen. In Qatar, it might happen because Qatar Emir is supreme. But what I feel is that this has not happened so far. PM has taken up with Qatar's Amir, because had it been the case of political victory, probably we would have won 1 year ago. But once the case was filed, once the case was arrest sub judice, then
no, but things take time, Ambassador Tripathi, don't they? And if not political, at least it's been a diplomatic victory for India. Reducing and calling off that death sentence is surely diplomatically a strength that we have currently.
But my experience is that diplomats they are not allowed to interfere with the legal process or influence the legal process. Yes, diplomatic victory in the sense that from the very first time when the embassy knew about this arrest, they had consular access and they had provided the legal assistance, what was needed. Now, and that's why, you remember the family members of these accused naval personnel. They appealed to the Amir for pardon. But since there was already a case and no decision was taken, Amir did not pay any heed to that. Now that the case is, appellate court has found it that case is not strong enough to give them the death sentence, capital sentence. And that's why that has got another angle also, Shreya. The angle is that the company was owned by an Omani, who too was arrested when he went to jail to meet these accused people. Who too was arrested, but later on he was acquitted. And another angle is that it is said that there are 8 or 9 Pakistani nationals working in that company. And after these people from India joined, the owner found that the Indians are far polls better than their Pakistani counterparts, and Pakistani employees were eased out one by one. And therefore, I think that there might be an angle of some Pakistani agency being involved in framing these people. Now, I feel that whatever is the sentence, now that death sentence is not there, so whatever is the sentence, the first thing is, in my experience in all the Gulf countries, there is a thing called mass pardon or mass general amnesty, and which is given either on the national days or on the Eid al-Fitr. If it is not given on national days because the case was still in the court. Now that one stage has been crossed, I don't know whether there is any revision, any process of revision, or um, any possibility of revision for this appeal uh, there in Qatari legal system. But even after all the appeals fail, all the legal processes legal options are exhausted, the Emir or Sultan or Sheikh has the power to grant general amnesty, and it is not in one or two or three cases, but I have seen that in Oman, where I served, thousands of Indians were granted general amnesty. We arranged for them. And there is a precedent. Three, three Filipinos, about 2 or 3 years back, they were also involved, they were also accused of um, espionage, but then later on they were given general amnesty
Okay.
and they were freed. So I very much hope that on 9th April, if not before, on 9th April, which is the next Eid ul-Fitr, they will be granted general amnesty by the Emir, and they will be free to come back to India.
Okay.
So that's my take.
Okay, Parvez, how much of that possibility do you think exists? You know, the Emir giving that pardon, as Ambassador Tripathi gave a lot of examples, that there have been past examples as well where the Emir has the power to grant pardon to somebody who's been accused. How much of that possibility would remain in this case?
Well, Sharia, in every nation, there is a of pardon to be granted either by the president or by the ruler. As in India, the president is vested with the powers of granting pardon. Similarly, in the states that are ruled by the emirs or rulers, they have that powers vested within them to grant pardon to anybody they seek. However, one point I would like to make is a disagreement with Mr. Tripathi to the extent that I agree that law will take its own course. But given the history of this case, when they were sentenced to death, we made a lot of noise as to the way the trial was conducted. It was only after the intervention of Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi with the Emir of Qatar that it was at least ensured through diplomatic channels that a fair hearing of the appeal be given. And it is the result of that fair hearing that their death sentence is commuted. So all credit goes to our diplomatic channels as well, along with the legal process that will take due course.
Okay. General Katoch, this is, of course, Ambassador Tripathi is not agreeing to it, but the fact of the matter is that once we got that consular access is when we started talking to our veterans, when, after that death sentence was given, the External Affairs Minister talked with the families who must have been going through so much, considering that their family members have been accused in a case outside the country. They don't know how their fate will turn out. But this reduction comes as a relief and as, as Parvez said, that as a success of our diplomatic channels, of our diplomacy.
No, I don't agree with Mr. Tripathi also on this particular point. You see, I understand that there is a legal process, and we go through the legal process. But there is also a question when two sovereign countries are speaking with each other. You see, especially when the head of state of each of these sovereign countries speak, it matters. It affects. So, so to say that the prime minister has got no involvement and his speaking won't make a difference, I really don't think so. It makes a difference. Of course, they're not going to overturn the legal process and be compelled to do anything like that. But everybody weighs everything on the scale. On the scales, on one side is 8 Navy personnel of India, a former Navy personnel of India, accused of spying. On the other hand is, and if they let it go through and with the death sentence, etc., there will be a rupture in the relationship between the two countries. The Emir is the head of Qatar. He will also work it out in his mind. Is it worth it? Is it suiting the larger interests of my country? So these things matter, it is not something that it is not a cut and dried
And
situation.
they
That,
always
okay,
have an
we
option
found
of
it not guilty
refusing,
and good
right? They
happened.
always can say, no, we're not going to pardon them. We're not going to reduce the sentence that has already been given. That option is always there.
No, absolutely. So in this case, I think you see it is if India had kept quiet, if our diplomats and the Prime Minister had not spoken, the diplomats had not spoken, and we had left these 8 Navy personnel to fend for themselves, I don't think the decision would have been reversed. You see, so it's important. It's important. Like our people were stuck in a war zone. We got them back. Now, it's very important to give that sense of feeling of belonging to each one of your country personnel that, listen, you belong to a country which is a strong country, and we as a government or we as a people will look after you. There is no Indian who's going to be stranded. Now, these Navy personnel, I think if they were actually spies, I don't think the Indian government would have really got involved to that extent. It just doesn't appear logical to me that they were spies. I can understand one individual, as I said earlier, but 8, it becomes a conspiracy, And what is there in Qatar of such earth-shattering importance, that those secrets will be stolen and Qatar's sovereignty will be threatened. So it doesn't work that way. Most likely they have been framed.
Okay.
Or there could be something else involved. I mean, we really don't know what has happened. None of us are privy to the information. But I think it is very important as a first step to that
Whether
commuted.
we'll come to know of
How
that
will-
is also debatable. We don't know whether this information will come out in public. But let me, ask the last question to Parvez. Parvez, we know that legal processes take time. These men were, given that death sentence and taken into custody last year. August 2022 is when they were arrested. It's more than a year now that we have been fighting this battle. But, in terms of the legal processes, how much more time will this go on for, or can we expect this to go on for till the time we reach a final conclusion to this case after we've explored and exploited all legal options?
Shreya, again, my statement should not be seen as political sycophancy here, but the fact remains that the trial process went on for a year. However, we all can see that the appeal process was wound up within 2 months. So it was only after the intervention of Indian diplomatic channels and the Honorable Prime Minister that this was expedited. I expect that the further process also would be completed as swiftly as the appeal process. And we can foresee that if it goes to Repatriation of Prisoners Act, we can have our people back, say, within next 6 months.
All right. All right, let's hope for that, and let's hope that we get our men back. I'm going to wrap this up here. Parvez Memon, General Katoch, and Ambassador Tripathi, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on Mirror Now and sharing your perspective on this good news that India saw today. We have, of course, a long battle ahead, but some relief there for not just these 8 Navy veterans, but all of us, that their death sentence has been called off. We'll keep getting you the latest on that on Mirror Now, but let's